Welcome to Mountains Made Low, where we help you encounter the love of God and live well in the modern world. I'm Christine Reagan.
And I'm Dennis Mueller.
So for decades, we as a human race have been making jokes about robots taking over the world and controlling our destinies. And the truth is that we've never been closer to that happening than at this point in time.
The reality of Terminator is on the horizon.
It is ever present.
Right?
It's just lurking at the door. We are one step away from all the things that have terrified us for decades.
Right.
But the capabilities of artificial intelligence, affectionately known as AI, it's never been more amazing in possibility, staggering. But we as individuals really do have to grapple with what is before us in this world, right? And as a society, how are we going to respond as Catholic Christians, as faith-filled people?
Yeah, and this particular episode really, it came to mind because the Archdiocese of Philadelphia here, where we're in ministry, had a seminar a couple of weeks ago, earlier this month as a matter of fact, on the pastoral impact of AI. And it got both Christine and I thinking about something that, honestly, we've never really given any consideration to. I mean, AI is so prevalent in our lives that we've just almost become accustomed to it. But as AI continues, artificial intelligence continues to expand and to grow, there are a lot of moral implications that we need to begin to get ahead of in order to be prepared for the ethical use of some of these in these situations.
It's not on my mind an awful lot, honestly. And it's one of these things where it's moving at such a rapid pace that I can't even stop it. So I don't even know what I would do necessarily. I mean, certainly I have more thoughts on it now, but if you had asked me a couple weeks ago, I have a very much like resistance is futile kind of a response.
Alexa, buy me coffee.
I just feel like this is a tide that is moving so quickly that I need to learn how to swim in it. I think that's really what the church's response is too. It's like, we're not going to get out of it. We have to be able, if the rest of the world's going to function like this, then we also have to learn how to function like this. But we really have to do so responsibly and
that's key.
Moderately. But we're not good at that though. I mean, look at the history of the world.
Yeah.
We don't, as humans, we don't do things that are responsible. We make mistakes and so many good things to say, yes, but our track record's not great.
No, and this is why we need the church, because it's the church that takes a look at all of these issues, moral, ethical issues, and is able to apply the gospel of Christ Jesus and the magisterium of the church and church tradition, and is able to cultivate a proper response, a proportionate response to some of the issues that AI is going to present.
I feel like we have to also get ahead of it. We have to see it coming. We have to anticipate where things are going to go. So I think a lot of it is, yes, we might be playing catch up in certain areas, but we have to plan for the future well and thoroughly too. We have to be able to navigate where we think these things may be going and how it could jeopardize the church, jeopardize the human person, maybe these moral decisions that have to be made, and maybe try to get ahead of it, which is, I think, what this lecture did.
This is something that we often take for granted, but it's something that we should be scrutinizing and should be looking at a little bit more closely. Not that, we're on the verge of Terminator, but we still need to be prepared, because some of the things that are taking place, as we'll look in this episode, some of the things that are actually happening now, we need to kind of question and pause, because it's here. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere.
Yep.
So how do we navigate that? I think it might be good for our listeners if we kind of come up with a definition of what we mean when we're talking about artificial intelligence. It's a programmed intelligence used by machines and computer systems that are associated with intellectual processes of humans. It's computer science that enables machines to perceive their environments and to use their programming to achieve set outcomes, set goals. And AI is designed to do things like to perceive situations and outcomes, to learn by itself, by ongoing interaction and ongoing computations, to make decisions. Well, I don't think I would argue with decisions. I would say make choices right now. It's not making decisions, because there's decisions involve some type of an ethical component, and that's void of
Well, I think the idea is that it's giving you a suggested outcome or a suggested way to operate.
AI makes choices and then puts those choices to you.
It makes recommendations.
Recommendations.
We could say
I think that's a good. And it problem solves. And we see
all
this.
things that we have kind of exclusively done up until recent memory.
Essentially, there's two types of artificial intelligence that we need to discriminate between. And the first one is narrow intelligence. And narrow intelligence is designed for very specific tasks, such as voice assistants like Siri and Alexa. And we're fine with that. There's no reason why you just can't say, hey, Alexa, turn up the volume on the music.
You know what I'm not fine with, though? When Alexa just starts talking out of the blue. And it's sometimes it'll happen late at night, lights are down, and it might be like a low battery. All of a sudden she's telling you that she has a low battery, and I'm like, there's ghosts here. Like, what's going on? So I don't like when these computers start speaking for themselves. That will unnerve me to no end.
As long as she's not getting up and telling you, Christine, it's time for you to go to the bathroom.
I have other processes that tell me that's necessary.
It's a little concerning.
It's more human oriented.
But this narrow AI, their recommendation systems, streaming platforms use them, image recognition software uses them. We encounter these on a regular daily basis, and they're not intrusive unless you live in Christine's house. But narrow AI is specialized and it operates within predefined parameters.
And in this way, I really do see AI as a tool.
Yeah.
But I think the plans for AI and what it's actually capable of now, it's going far beyond the things that we're most comfortable with.
Which brings us to the second type of AI, which is known as general AI. And sometimes that goes by the acronym AGI, Advanced General Intelligence.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's a more advanced form that aims to actually replicate human cognitive abilities in a much more general, adaptable manner. So general AI is used in military things. It's used in a lot of the word programs that were used, like the Chat GPT, Bard, the Llama, Claude, all of these other types of writing assistant programs are making use of general intelligence or advanced.
It seems to me like it's early stage general, because what they want general to be able to do,
it is early
it's more
stage.
theoretical now.
It is early stage, but when you begin to take a look at the research and the commentaries out there, all of these language programs have really laid the foundation for it.
Right.
The groundwork is laid. They just have to fine tune it because those systems aren't perfect.
No.
There's flawed. Even though you might be having a computer doing math or something like that, sometimes it does come up with the wrong answer or the wrong response. When you ask it to write a paper, sometimes there's flaws in the logic of the paper. So it's not perfect, but the groundwork's being laid. And in terms of some other areas in life, especially with regards to military applications, it's already out there.
Yeah, it's being used.
It's being used.
Yeah, but the idea of like a computer making an ethical decision, maybe, or making an ethical recommendation, I don't know that that's being used by and large, but that's what they want.
Right.
That is the end result.
Right.
All this Chat GPT stuff is laying a future
foundation
that is going to be very much computer led and driven if we don't do something. Yeah. So we're already using so many elements of AI. You talked about using search engines, and every time I ask my Echo to play this podcast, which I don't know if you knew you could do, but folks, if you're just in your kitchen and you're doing dishes, you could say, Echo, play Mountains Made Low, and our voices will start.
You can ask Alexa the same thing.
Well, Echo is Alexa. It's the smaller dot version
right.
of Alexa.
That's right. Well, I don't have either.
You had such a smug attitude just now. You're like, oh, well, I call it Alexa, and I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. So
I don't have either of those.
Smart.
Yeah. Just don't want it.
It does make life easier in some sense. I mean, I can do things hands-free, and that's great. I can play music and everything. It's all very entertainment-oriented. It's not actually serving me in any kind of...
Yeah. We don't need that type of stuff at home because my family has me for entertainment, so we're good.
As good as all this is, as good as our podcast, at a moment's notice or, fingertip away, I don't know, voice recognition away. I think the idea of robots and computer systems having human qualities should give us a lot of pause. And they have made, like we said in the beginning, they've made so many movies about how this is going horribly wrong. How have we not been scarred by these things? I'll tell you, I went to a dim sum restaurant a couple months ago with my family simply because we heard that a robot comes to your table and delivers your food, and then you take it off the tray.
That's cool.
And I thought my kids would absolutely love it. And they did. Now, this was a very low budget robot, but even I felt like I'm in the future.
It wasn't WALL-E.
It's like here. I'm sorry?
It wasn't WALL-E.
It was not WALL-E. No.
Okay.
No, it was just like a little cart that moved by itself and it had eyes on the front. And I really did feel like I was in the future. I liked that experience of it. But in a broader sense, I really just don't think that I like the idea of living among robots. I don't mind the gimmick of a restaurant, even though I absolutely hate that giant robot, the giant supermarket where it just like it follows you. And I don't care how many times they tell me, oh, he's just taking inventory, or it cleans up the floor and he's mopping as he moves. They can't get their story straight. So I have no interest in this giant robot that multiple times I have gasped out loud because I didn't realize it was near me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're here again. But at this stage of my life, really the only concern that I have, other than going to Giant, is if my students are going to use AI to write a paper.
Yeah, that was the big ethical thing when those programs first came out.
Yeah, and there are programs that you can run papers through, but that's the extent of my concern up until this point. I don't mind computers and AI serving and assisting humanity. But what I am really concerned about is putting AI on par with humanity. Yeah. If it's a tool, I have no problem. I think that it's very apparent, though, that the plans and the capabilities are going to far exceed tool status. And that scares me. And I think it should.
I think personally, like, application is key. How it's applied is key. Like AI being used to help me create a grocery list because it's been monitoring my food consumption and learning my eating habits is one thing. It's another when militaries are using lethal autonomous weapon systems. They have acronyms for everything, but look at the acronym for that. It's LAWS. Right?
There's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah,
is what I hear
right.
when I hear that.
That just that acronym is concerning. Lethal automated weapon systems, where these weapon systems make critical decisions such as identifying and engaging targets without any type of direct human intervention. And the irony is, I just read an article because these types of weapons are already being used in conflicts like Ukraine by both sides. And what's disturbing is it removes the human element from the decision-making process. Like when you have a human being who's flying a drone, he sees the targets on the ground. He's able to discriminate. He sees a child there, and he's able to pause before he carries out any attack to get authorization from his higher-ups saying there's possible innocence here, looking for guidance. There's a human decision in the use of those automated weapon systems, because there's still a human being involved. With these
and your conscience can kick in. Where's the conscience for a lethal weapon system?
Right. So these lethal automated weapon systems that are using AI, they're all self-guided. They're programmed to make those types of choices.
So when we're talking about decision making, they are making decisions though. Then it's not recommendations. They're already making decisions, it seems.
Well, they're making a choice based on their programming.
Is that not decision making when you make a choice?
To make the decision, I would still argue that a decision really involves a lot more than just algorithms.
But people are dying based on how these are being used. And there's no oversight. We're
applying it's artificial intelligence. So we're going to use terms very similar to how we describe our own intelligence and our own use of our intellect. We're going to use words like choices and decisions, but I think they're really nuanced when it comes to artificial intelligence. And you might disagree, but I just think that these are the things that you have to flesh out in the conversation about AI, how it functions, and its application.
I think once you've made a choice, though, that's your decision. I think maybe it can filter through.
But is AI capable of that?
Well, it's doing it.
No, it's making a choice in the moment.
But that's a decision. I'm confused. How are you?
Okay, so just bear with me.
Okay.
just bear with me, because when we talk,
like when I give a test, there's multiple choice. There's 4 choices sometimes. Once you select one of them, that's the decision that you're entering in to be evaluated. You've made, and you can't take it back. You're making a decision based on the choices that you're given.
Right. So it's interesting, but in the same article that I was reading on this, one of the things that they were doing is making a distinction between choice and decision making. And what they said was that while a choice, and I'm quoting, while a choice might involve selecting between various options based on predefined criteria, and that's what they're doing. Okay. They're using the tech that's there, these automated weapon systems, lethal automated weapon systems. They're using that predefined criteria to discriminate what it is that they're looking at, and they're making a choice based upon that predefined criteria. A decision is a uniquely human act that involves ethical reflection. It involves consideration of broader consequences and a sense of responsibility towards the dignity of the affected individuals.
I agree. Now, that's how we would employ it.
Right.
The problem is that the outcome, whether the person's doing it or we're allowing the machine to do it, if the machine's making a choice and we're making a decision, the outcome's the same.
The outcome is the same, but the process is different.
Right.
You're removing the human element. And only human beings are capable of making decisions.
But now if we're abdicating that responsibility and we're giving it to a computer, they've now made
A choice.
a decision that is akin to what we should have done, but we've abdicated that responsibility. So now they're deciding for us.
Well,
We're giving them human qualities. I get what you're saying. I completely understand.
I get what you're saying
Yeah.
too, in the sense that they're usurping.
What a mature thing that just happened between us. Instead of we just had a mutual response and admiration for words that were being exchanged, and that was
Podcast
nice.
isn't over.
It's also derailed. I did not picture us talking about lethal systems in the first couple
I
moments.
know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, this is good. This is
but this is the advanced general intelligence that's out there, and the concerning part is that you're removing the human element.
What's concerning to me is that when I was doing some research about what's general versus what's more narrow, information that I was getting back was very clear to say we don't really have to worry about general so much. It's still a theory. It's not happening. These things seem to be happening. Don't say it's theoretical when we have systems like this that are already operating.
Yeah, they're already in operation.
So that's concerning when the information is not truth telling.
I think that it's not in our hands yet.
But it's in human hands.
It's in human hands.
There's like an elite group of people that get to decide and they do the programming. I mean,
But when you think about how technology works, generally application really is for military use. I mean, that's where the funding goes more so than everyday use, utilities.
Yeah, I think you're going to see it in medicine.
It's going to come in there. It's going to filter into there.
I wonder
But I'm not surprised that it's starting in that environment.
I wonder if there's something to be analyzed there. The fact that it's starting out in warfare, maybe more so than anything else.
Yeah.
That's where are we putting our energy?
Right.
This is not, Siri, play me a Lumineers song. This is not that we're not very different application of it. And
and the problem is that there's no guidance, there's no agreements, there's no accords on how these weapon systems can be used. Like we have the Geneva Convention for the ethical treatment of combatants in warfare. And this is all new. And there's no such agreements. Nobody knows. Not every country has the technology yet. So who's ultimately responsible should a law kill somebody who's innocent or kill the wrong target?
Well, yeah.
Is it the manufacturer that's responsible? Is the person
programmer?
The programmer? Like who's
the country?
Right. Who's the country? Who's responsible for this? So the tech used is really outpacing our ability to answer a lot of these moral questions regarding its use. And that's really concerning. Yeah. That's really concerning. But this conference or this lecture at St. Charles Seminary brought up a couple of points that we really wanted to share and that are worth considering.
Yeah. It seemed like the overwhelming question that was being asked is, can AI, in the best sense of how it would operate, can it really be at the service of God and human beings? And how can that be achieved?
Yeah. I would say
that's
yes.
What they were talking about.
I would say it can be, but there has to be some guidelines for how that.
So the way that this lecture was structured is that there were 3 presenters and they were speaking from their particular area of expertise. So there was like a moral component, there was a ministerial and communicative component, and then the last one was all very arts and liturgy oriented, which I'll tell you, to me, they kind of saved the best for last. Not that anybody was better than anything else. Yeah. They all made wonderful points that were so unique and specific to how they would analyze something. But the liturgical one, I think, is the one that we need to be talking about the most. So we'll talk about it. Is it fair to disclose that you did not hear this firsthand and that I watched it myself?
It is fair to.
Okay, I think we have to get So I virtually attended, which means I just watched it on YouTube. That's
we
what that
had
means.
planned to go together, and then things kind of went sideways. I think it was on a Monday.
Yeah. So what I did was I kind of made notes about it, and I'd be interested to hear your reaction in the moment, especially as we hash some of this out. The first presenter was Dr. John Haas, who I think is now the former president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. I don't think he's in that position anymore, but he is the moral go-to guy. He spoke from an ethical perspective, and what I gathered as his main point was that AI can be very useful in healthcare, but that it can really run the risk of depersonalizing what should be done in a deeply personal and compassionate way. And
I mean, that's true, because this is a time when you need compassion, you need empathy the most, because you're dealing with your health. And most people, when they're dealing with, if they're in a hospital, if they're seeing a doctor and they're dealing with health issues, it's stuff they're worried about. It's not stuff that they're just going to be like, okay, let this machine, tell me what's got to be.
The whole reason I don't want to get a new primary is because I don't want to, he knows me. The one I have now, he knows who I am. He knows my stuff. He maybe knows my family history, all sorts of, I don't want to really start over again because it is really personal. All the stuff that you have to go through.
Yeah. And if you think about it, even when you go to a doctor's office that has multiple doctors in there, you have your doctor, and when your doctor's not there and they say, do you want to see so-and-so instead because your doctor's away on vacation, you're like, no, I'll wait till they come back. I want my doctor.
And yeah, I like the fact that my doctor knows who I am and knows me. My doctor has given me hugs on occasion when things have been difficult. Dr. Haas said really in the case of medicine, a diagnostician has never been better off in serving the needs of a patient because of the information that he can work with now, he or she. But if it's not treated like a supplemental tool, we can't say that AI, it can't be compassionate in the way that a person can be compassionate. No. It can't really show real empathy the way that a person should be. Maybe we don't do that enough, but the person should be empathetic, and they can't discern what's best for the patient based on all the different circumstances that might be at play.
Yeah, you need a soul for those things.
And even if you need a soul, but I wonder to what extent we're going to recreate the behavior of a soul, so much so that it might be indistinguishable.
I think that's just it. No matter how good AI gets, deep down as a human being, you know that this is a machine and that it's programming. But
if we're around it for long enough, will we start to say it's okay, that it's a computer, it's still asking me if I'm okay, or it's still showing me, like, if we're around it too long, will we begin to be fooled?
That's the scary point.
And that's kind of, when Siri responds now, and it's very robotic, it's like playing the Lumineers. Ooh, it's not, it doesn't sound like a conversation, but are there AI recreations out there that really do sound like you're having a conversation, very natural and all? Is that going to be what Siri's going to turn into? And is that what the social worker at the hospital is going to just be, a computer that comes in and says, how's your day today? Or what? Yeah. All that stuff.
I mean, the day that we have C-3PO come into my office is the day that I grab him and sell him to the Jawas.
Having C-3PO walk into the room would be the best case scenario for any of this, because how did he have so many human qualities? Was it just because of the programming that he had?
It's definitely programming. There's no consciousness. There's no consciousness in
But what movie was it where his memory got like erased and they gave it back to him because they didn't feel as though it was fair to kind of depersonalize him like that, because they had attributed so much personhood to him? Remember that? Like,
I do.
He wouldn't remember all the things that he's been through. And
that was
Revenge of the Sith, wasn't it?
No, that was in the Star Wars, the last movie.
Right.
Yeah,
the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, they were my favorite.
I thought 9 did everything it could to
redeem
8 and 7 forgettable. Just I mean, with anything, Dr. Haas was very clear about all moral decisions. It's not just enough to have data. You also have to have the circumstances, and the whole thing has to be prudent. Prudence is key, and AI can help us be the moral agents that we're supposed to be, but it can't become the moral agent for us. All of this really does impact the Catholic Church, coming at it from a healthcare perspective, because the Catholic faith is the largest medical provider after the government in the entire country. So we're going to be on the forefront of all of these medical and healthcare decisions. We have 600 Catholic hospitals. There's roughly 1,500 or 1,600 other healthcare related care facilities. Yeah. And so this is going to touch, and who's staffing all the hospitals, Catholic or not? Catholics, right? There's so many employees that come at this from a Catholic Christian experience and perspective. So
yeah, but you know what, Christine? I mean, I'm just going to, just a little tangent here.
Go ahead.
Or a rant,
I'll
actually.
Take a drink of water.
Yeah, actually, it's more of a rant, because what I see happening in Catholic healthcare, because we have so many Catholic hospitals in our area right here, is that we see them becoming increasingly secular and far less Catholic in how they approach medicine.
Right. You can't just put a cross in a hospital room and call it a day.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it is. Outside of having like maybe a Catholic priest come around on staff who brings communion, their Catholic identity is becoming blurred. And I do wonder just how resistant some of these hospitals might be to guidance from the Catholic Church on the use of artificial intelligence, if they're being ruled by the economics of healthcare.
I don't want to abdicate the responsibility that we have as providing healthcare in a Catholic way, but I'm concerned about if we'll have to give that up one day.
Yeah.
Can we really have a Catholic hospital anymore based on other government restrictions? And are we going to have to get out of the business of caring for one another? I think that AI could really dehumanize the whole process, right?
Yeah, there's a danger for that.
If we're not upholding the dignity of the human person, a machine can't do that. We might tell it to consider this, this, and this, but it's not making the full empathetic, soul-oriented response that needs to, because we're not looking at each other like just bodies. We should be looking at each other like people who are made in the image of God.
And that's what I mean by choice versus decision. Because,
but we're still giving them the ability to do the same thing.
Well, we call it a decision. We say that they're making decisions, but really all they're doing is making a set of choices based upon the data that they have in front of them. They're not really making a decision that's incorporating all of those things that you just talked about. That human element is missing.
Yeah, we can't dehumanize everything so much so in favor of just more efficiency or more money when it comes to like insurance companies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real important part of the conversation. Does the AI program tell the insurance company, stop paying for this person because it's just not in your best interest, their best interest as they evaluate it, the family's, society's best interest? What are we going to do with that kind of a system?
And if you think that that's, oh, well, that would never happen, take a look at healthcare right now, because managed care is not in the response, is not being made by decisions. It's being made by insurance individuals for the company who's saying, yeah, we're going to authorize this. No, we're going to deny this.
Yeah.
It's already
how pre-existing conditions are evaluated.
Yeah.
Something Dr. Haas said, and I think this is one of his quotes because he was referring to Pope Francis a lot too, but he said, we can't turn what should be an interaction into a transaction. And we can't treat people like transactions. We're people. We need human contact, and AI could very easily erode that element.
Well, I would argue that it's already been eroded. I mean, just take a look at the effect of personal interaction that technology's already had on society over the last 20 years. Just go out to dinner and look at the lack of interaction when a family's sitting at the table. Everybody's on their devices. Nobody's in communication with one another. You can drive down the street here and you have 20 kids waiting to get on the bus. Nobody's talking to one another. No. Everybody has a device in their hand. Yeah. Even at home, we grew up, everybody was outside. We were doing things. Mom said, get out of the house. We would go out. We'd come back at dinner times. Somebody would tell us dinner was on. And we'd be out there just doing stuff, causing trouble, getting a ruckus, living life. And today, you can't even get kids to leave the house. If they're not involved in sports where parents are dragging them out to different things, they're on their devices. They come home. I hear from parents all the time. They go upstairs. They go up into the room until dinner time. They're on their devices. They come home. They're on video games. They're on their computers. They're on their devices. So that idea of AI leading to the erosion of personal interaction is really concerning, because it's just going to exacerbate problems that we're already dealing with. And loneliness has been deemed by the Surgeon General as one of the most concerning epidemics. Yeah, epidemics facing people today. Now add AI into it, and you have, like you said, you have a personal relationship with a doctor. You can't have a personal relationship with AI robot designed to make choices based on programming, no matter how good, no matter how lifelike they are.
I think about fertility treatment and prenatal care, end-of-life issues. That's really going to hit this AI business pretty hard.
Yeah.
Is AI going to be programmed to consider the church's teaching? Is it really going to be able to understand why it's making the recommendations that it is? Are we going to program it with that kind of an awareness when it comes to the church's stance on euthanasia? And it's already such an area in terms of beginning of life issues, end of life issues, where as a society and as a country, we're not particularly moral. Yeah. Is it going to make it better? Just when it comes to the church's teaching on beginning of life issues and end of life issues, is AI going to be able to fully consider the church's full teaching on these matters?
We do have this throwaway culture.
That's what I was thinking.
That we deal with.
This is not going to make it better.
Yeah, because we already have human beings making decisions that somebody's life is not really of any value because they can't contribute to society. And so euthanasia is pushed, assisted suicide is pushed, the termination of a child because they might be a test positive for Down syndrome in the womb.
It's going to be left to the church and to priests in a very particular way to not just care for the parishioners, but to also help the medical professionals in their church to handle these things appropriately. Yeah. And I don't know on a average parish basis if any of that's really going on in terms of the education on what the church believes and why she teaches what she teaches, what our response should be in light of that. If we're not doing it now, are we just going to start doing it when AI becomes more of a concern and more of a problem? And that's a lot of pressure on the priests. Are we preparing the priests to be able and equipping them to be able to do it?
That's why you have to start having these conversations now. And I think that was the purpose of this seminar too,
Yeah.
This conference.
Ethical reflection, he talked about, has to be the centerpiece. He said, he was recalling a Pope Francis quote. He said, ethics over technology, persons over things, and the superiority of spirit over matter. It can assist the human hand, but it can't become the human hand. And even Francis, he objects to the whole titling of all of this ability as artificial intelligence. He thinks it's like a really dangerous misnomer, and he thinks it's misused. He said that it's a word that's so closely associated with human power and ability. Do we really want to assign it to technology? He thinks that we're oddly humanizing machines.
Did he ever propose an alternative?
I don't know about an alternative, but he's made a lot of recent statements. So maybe he's preparing to make more and more. But he doesn't even think we should be using the word intelligence, because that's something that humans were made to do. So maybe artificial programming, artificial assistance, artificial navigation. I mean, there's other words you could use that are more tech oriented.
Right.
But we're intelligent. God's intelligent. Unless we're planning on making the computers God, which might be where this is all going. That kind of closed out the moral component.
And then there was a ministry and communication component.
Yeah.
And that was handled by Father Daly.
He actually helps us here in the parish. He was speaking as somebody who is a very good communicator himself, and then the formation of future priests who are going to be ministers. And he started the whole thing off by saying machines will only be as powerful and intelligent as we allow them to be. Yes, absolutely. So we're like the gatekeepers of where this goes. We have to take that really seriously. And maybe we are. I don't mean to be a downer about all this. I just know our track record, and I see that continuing in the future. He talked about how AI and machines can really do a lot more and can hold a lot more than our minds can comprehend, and they can be far more efficient. He said it so simply. He was like, machines don't get tired, basically, and people do. And I was thinking I was trying to pair it with healthcare, and like, well, what about a surgeon who has to stop and rest because he just doesn't have the stamina? Well, maybe robotic surgery doesn't need to do that. And so right now, I think the robotic surgery is being handled by people behind the scenes, but it can be very good.
All of this has some incredible potential as a tool. But when that tool becomes the means, as you said, it's one thing for us to use our hands. It's another thing for the tools to become our hands.
Become the hand. He said that our minds tend to wander and wonder, I think are the words that he used. And machines don't do that. And can it help my mind function in a way that is more precise and is more focused? Then he made a chilling statement, and he said the future of us may be determined by what machines do for us or even without us. And if we don't tell the machines how to appropriately operate, they're going to tell us what we're going to do. He talked about how there was a priest who AI generated a homily. Like, I think he asked him how it was, and he was like, well, it was kind of stale and bland, and it was maybe a little bit sterile, but it's better than what most people are hearing on a Sunday basis already. And I'm like, well, there you go. If it would help the preaching, if it helps the people in the pews, does it really matter all the time that the priest not formulating it on his own and he's using the assistance of like ChatGPT or something like that? That version's already better than what we're already bringing to the AMBO. So what does that say about the preaching that's being done?
Well, I would step back here, because I would be really concerned about any priest that was slacking in his ministry. I mean, if I ever found out a priest was using AI to write his homilies, a computer cannot be the voice of God. I can. The Holy Spirit, when I'm standing at that pulpit, no matter how prepared I am or ill-prepared I am, God can still use me as an instrument of divine communication in revealing himself, his word, what he wants that person in the pew to hear from him. That's not going to happen in AI. God is not, you're taking him completely out of the equation. And I would be horrified at any priest that would just sit back to use AI to generate his homily.
Okay.
I can use, again, if I'm going to use it as a tool. I think you're taking it to like the furthest negative experience possible. Not every priest is a gifted preacher.
So can it
understand
be
that.
used
As a tool?
Yes. But here's the thing. But I think what he was getting at, what is it? What does it say about the state of our preaching that the Chat GPT ones are better than what is going on a regular basis?
That's a whole nother issue.
Priests out there who might use things like that to assist them, I hope they're not printing out their homilies. If that's not where you really excel, then would I want you to give me something the best you can give me on a Sunday basis? Yeah. And if Chat GPT helps you formulate, I hadn't thought of that about expressing it. I'm not talking about copy and pasting. Absolutely not. But could it help preachers get more comfortable? Could it help preachers communicate in a way that maybe is not natural to them, and it can help them hone that particular skill? I think it could be good.
I don't know. I have to think about that a little bit more. I'm uneasy about even just the process.
But here's the thing. We do it already in other areas. Like when you give a presentation,
but that's me.
You have your thoughts.
Right. This is me. These are my thoughts, and I own them. But when I am standing at the pulpit, I am God's instrument in that moment, regardless of how prepared I am.
And you're using the wealth of Catholic intellectual commentary to inform all of that. So whether I'm using 18 different books to formulate a homily versus Chat GPT,
who's making
those.
The decision?
Well, what if I'm picking and choosing what I'm going to include?
Right, exactly. I'm making the decision as to what and who's influencing.
I don't think anyone's saying that they're just printing it out willy-nilly.
Right, but who's helping to influence those decisions? I would say it would be the Holy Spirit. If a priest is truly open to the Word of God and he's praying about what he's going to preach, God will answer and he'll guide him to putting together a homily. It doesn't mean it's going to be a home run. It doesn't mean it's going to be great, because there's a human element to that could epically fail because of personalities, because of just skill level. That can happen. But you're taking God out of the equation because you're using artificial intelligence to make those quote unquote decisions for you.
Okay. If you have none of your own participation going on, then I would agree with you. Yeah. But I think a lot of times priests or seminarians might be using it as an aid.
I don't think it should be used at all. That's just me. I mean, even as an aid, it becomes a crutch. It just becomes a crutch, and you're literally de-godifying. Forget about dehumanizing. You're de-godifying the homily. And I don't think AI should be used at all. AI in terms of making sure that your grammar's correct. I don't understand the difference between
AI and pulling, your books out. And what if the same information is being relayed? The same information. I could open a book and say, St. Augustine said this, versus Chat GPT saying St. Augustine stated this at such and such. It's the same thing. But it's just the way in which you're receiving it and the rate at which you're receiving it.
But the AI is actually composing the homily.
I'm thinking assisting preachers, not becoming the preacher.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Like I said, as a tool, I think it's okay. I would be concerned that it might be a crutch and everything. Do your homework. Spend the time. Don't be lazy. Know your stuff. As a priest, you should know your stuff. You should be.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, you should know these things.
And as a teacher, I should know my stuff.
You should have your resources on your shelf. You should be able to look at the homily, pray about it, and be able to put together a homily.
I agree. I just don't have an issue if AI or Chat GPT in particular is incorporated into that. Just in the interest of time and efficiency, and to give new ideas that then you can wrestle with and hopefully then make your own.
I'm not sold. So
okay. I think we're literally talking about the same process in two different ways.
Yeah, but I'm just not sold.
You also seem really upset about it.
Yeah, this is
annoying you.
Yeah, this really bothers me.
Why?
Because
is it maybe just the state of preaching that's really bothering you?
No, it's not the state of preaching. That's again, that can be addressed through formation. Proper formation and everything like that can be addressed. And this diocese, particularly with Father Daly, is making tremendous strides.
Yeah, he's a fabulous
in turning around preaching in this diocese. So that's my least concern. My concern is for those priests that don't want to improve, relying on AI to do the work for them.
I don't think it's never going to see the light of day. This did not go at all the way I thought it would. Okay. Where were we?
I think
holiness. Can we talk about holiness for just a second? Maybe what you're talking about. AI can give us the information so that we grow in knowledge, yes, but it can't really cultivate metanoia and holiness and conversion in people.
I would agree.
And we have to really grow in these things. And the growth, it's not about just gaining knowledge and acquiring something. It's about really growing in something, which means you have to be rooted in something, which means it requires like meditation and discernment and reflection. All things that you really need a human mind to be able to do. But I think that AI can help you do that. It can give you new things to consider. It can give you new things to dwell on. And in that way, it can be an asset to holiness. Anytime I use my apps and stuff, a lot of that's AI oriented. It's helping me be holy in its own way. But again, it's a tool. Yeah. But it's not the cause for my holiness. It can't bring about holiness in me. That's something I have to do in my relationship with God directly.
Agreed.
Liturgy and art was the third and final installment. So the final presenter of this seminar was a man named Dr. Nathan Knutson, and he's the director of sacred music for the seminary. And I did not expect what he was going to bring to the table. I didn't know what role art and liturgy were going to have in this. I should have seen it coming, because once he started, I thought, there's a reason I think they put him last. And he spoke about just how much time things take and how good that time spent can really be. And I found this very, very moving. He reflected on kind of the immediate gratification that goes on today and how that can make it difficult to grow closer to God and other people. And he reflected on his upbringing on like a farm. He was a farm boy. And he said so much of his family time was spent on the farm in prayer and work. He looks at his family now, he said, and he thinks that because there isn't that hard labor, there isn't that time spent in the same way, that maybe something's been lost. That's what I understood from his comments there. And he spoke of having to introduce new things. That's kind of the human way of being. It's, this is new. And then we throw out something old in favor of something that's just more modern, perhaps. And how he thinks liturgical music has really suffered. And the hymns that we sing at Mass, we don't hear the great masterpieces anymore. The people like Palestrina and Mozart and Bach and all that. He talked about a farming setting and the setting of sacred music. He said, I think this is all because we're afraid to pray. And prayer takes time in the same way that farming took time, in the same way that the great masterpieces and the polyphony of Palestrina, that all took time. He talked about one piece in particular, and I forget which one it was, but he talked about how it took a year. And the idea of something taking a year for me, it's just, oh gosh, you don't want to have to think that far out. And he said, we've become kind of spiritually lazy. And he said, it's easier for a choir to just crank out that 70s hit, which frankly nobody wants to hear, and makes liturgy more boring and mundane because it's easier than having the choir put in the work and accept the challenge that the rehearsal and the diligence and the time would take, and having all the necessary qualified people to be able to bring that about too. All of this takes resources. All of this takes time.
So how does AI factor into all that?
He was really more commenting on the negative impact of AI in this, and that AI is making our prayer problem worse. The fact that I can DoorDash food to my house in 2 seconds is in some way related to why my prayer life has suffered, because DoorDash doesn't take any time and prayer does. Therefore, I want to stop praying in favor of things that are just quick and immediate. And if I had to spend time on a farm, I would understand that when I buy food, I just go to the grocery store or I have it shipped to me. I have Blue Apron shipped to me on a weekly basis, right? I don't even go to the grocery store anymore. It's more of that immediate, convenient gratification. Whereas if I grew up on a farm, I would see how much time everything took. It's cared for and it's seeded and it's all of that takes time. And if we let go of the work, if we let go of the prayer, then eventually we're going to let go of the liturgy too, perhaps. Now, he didn't say that, but I think that was his connection. The liturgy takes time. There's a reason that you don't pull up and it's like a communion drive-through. It's not like that. The liturgy is the work of the people. Well, what if the people are afraid to work?
Yeah.
What happens then?
It's an interesting perspective.
Definitely. If we're going to let go of the beautiful, all the beautiful art that we all love, right? I'm looking at the Last Supper image. How much time did that take? Yeah. Can I type in AI and say, give me a modern recreation of the Last Supper? It can give me something in 2 seconds. But is it going to be the piece that Michelangelo labored over? Art and music takes suffering and all sorts of important elements. Isn't that what makes it great? The human element of time and work and suffering.
And when
isn't that what we admire?
Right, but when you talk about why maybe people don't come to Mass, one of the responses that you hear a lot is, "I don't have time."
You always have time for what's important to you.
You don't have time.
It's just I think about the time that God took in creating. I think about the investment of self in the work of redemption.
Right.
That's the example that's been set. And I think he was highlighting music and art in particular because of just how much time those two things can really take and how much we appreciate that on this end. We can't let this AI immediate gratification society that we live in really dull our senses and our conviction to work.
Okay. I'm glad that you made that last comment because I'm listening to you and I'm like, I'm just not seeing the connection with
I feel
AI.
Like you feel that way a lot when I talk.
No, I was
sometimes.
I was lost and my mind started wandering trying to make connections here. Like where is this? This is all good stuff. So to summarize what it is that you said, he was put last to really show the importance of the human element as opposed to what AI brings to the table.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I think so. I think he was just saying if we let it dull our humanity too much, we're going to cease to be human and do the things that humans were created to do, which is ultimately praise God.
Yeah.
And praising God takes time, and it's time well spent. But if nothing else in life takes time, then why am I going to give my time to God? Why am I going to give my time to worship? It's like like on Ash Wednesday, oftentimes. People don't want to come to the Ash Wednesday liturgy. They just want their ashes so they can go.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how any of this works.
Drive-through ashes.
They do have drive-through ashes.
Yeah.
And now, make of that what you will. We could never do that with Holy Communion. And all the time and prayer gives way to that moment of Holy Communion where now we're in that intimate relationship. I understood him saying, if we stop working, if we stop praying, then we're going to stop being human, creative people who have contributed to the beauty that we're not going to be co-creators with God anymore because we're not going to take the time to do it. And we're not going to have the holiness to be able to do it because the cultivation of conversion also takes time. If Jesus hadn't taken the time to die, what would become of us?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because AI really does make life more convenient. And it certainly does free up time. Like you said, you don't have to go shopping for groceries. Yep. You just have everything delivered. Perfect. Yep. Okay. So you're doing that now, but the time that you're gaining is being filled with other things that may or may not be assisted by AI, but it's not really helping us to get...
No, it's like one more shortcut or it's one more...
It's not really helping us to achieve that ultimate end that we talked about when we talked about the four last things.
Yeah.
Our goal really is to become the saints that God called and created us to be. And if we're taking all these shortcuts in life to free up our time, and that time is not being utilized to appreciate the beauty of creation, the beauty of humanity,
and the beauty of the work that's been done,
the beauty of the art and the work that's been done, to really sit down and contemplate God, and even using that time to pray more and to worship God more fully, then we are really doing ourselves a disservice. We're just in the hamster wheel of life in constant motion, but really not going anywhere.
Kind of ended on a bit of a downer. You're done. You are checked out, my friend.
No, I'm still thinking. I'm just, like I said, this is, we wanted to kind of present this only because it is something new. It's on the forefront, and
we're kind of working this out ourselves.
And that's what I'm doing here. Like I really don't have a response for that because I'm still processing a lot of stuff that you've said and it's been shared, and I really haven't thought some of these things through.
And I think the listener is going to be like that too. I mean, I only have the advantage of listening to one seminar.
And as this issue gets fleshed out more and more in the time ahead, I think it'll be maybe something that we'll have to circle back to in order to help the listeners to really understand maybe what the church is saying or what the church is concerned about.
Yeah.
And any guidance that it promulgates in a document or an encyclical or something that's going to speak to this, to the issue.
All right. Well, I think that was, I can't wait to see how this all comes together.
I'm glad you're editing.
Oh, gosh.
Well, if you have any questions or, just email us. I don't know if we'll be able to answer them with this topic.
Yeah.
But, we can
give you Father Daly's seminary office phone number.
or we can maybe put the link to the...
That's a good one. Yes.
To the thing in the program.
Yeah. And anything that I said in a paraphrased form is painfully less than how these initial wildly intelligent presenters would have said it. So keep that in mind. If you're like, I don't think she got that right, she may not have. So go listen to the lecture.
It's definitely worth listening to.
Yeah.
Says the guy who didn't listen to it yet, but I am. It's on my to-do list. I just didn't get it to it before this episode.
We'll see you next time.
All right. God bless.